We are conducting this meeting virtually. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the meeting, the public may access this call through video conferencing or telephone as instructed in the agenda for tonight's meeting. I have to accept recording on the town's website. If you haven't already done so, please identify yourself on the screen, and you can do this by holding the mouse over your picture and clicking on the three dots at the top and using the rename feature so we know who you are. I'm also going to request that everyone mute their microphones or to limit background noise and only unmute them when called on. As you'll note in the posted agenda, members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions, provide public comment, and give feedback. We will also, at certain times of the committee's, certain parts of the committee discussion, ask for input from the public. Please raise your hand so we can see it. The moderator will unmute you, and please identify yourself when you speak with your name and address. And all votes will be taken by roll call vote. And finally, in the event of technical difficulties where Zoom becomes unavailable, all matters on the agenda that have not been heard or completed will automatically be continued to the next Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee, which is on May 6th. Hopefully we will not have an issue. First order of business is to appoint a recorder, and the minutes for tonight's meeting will be taken by committee member Adrian Boardman. Adrian, thank you for offering to do that. And at this time, I will ask the committee members to indicate that they are present and confirm their audio. Co-chair Richard Follander.
Here.
John Soden. John here.
John is not here.
John is not here. Okay. Carol Steele. Carol, you're muted, I think, but I saw you nod your head.
Yes, I'm here.
Good. Adrian Boardman.
Here.
Dorcas Miller. Dorcas, you are muted. I see you. You are waving. I will say that you are here because I see you alive. And finally, myself, Nat Welch. We have 5 members tonight. That is a quorum, and we will therefore continue. Our first agenda item is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any edits from the committee members that you want to suggest for the minutes from the March 4th meeting? Okay.
I move we approve the minutes of the March 4th meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Vote to approve the minutes of the March 4th meeting. Ms. Boardman?
Approve.
Mr. Follander?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Soden is not here. Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Soden is joining the meeting.
Mr. Soden, welcome, Mr. Soden. And then Mr. Welch votes yes to approve the minutes. Committee member John Soden, are you here? And you might be muted. You are muted.
Sorry, I had a small technical glitch. I had to reboot. I'm
Okay,
here.
thank you. So John Soden is here. We now have 6 members present. So let's see. Our next order of business is the update from the town. Marcia Rasmussen of the planning and land development, I believe, is your official title.
No, planning and land management.
Sorry, planning and land management. Thank you, Marcia. Please, you have the floor.
Okay. So most people know that 2A has been completed and is ready to be enjoyed, and that's that portion from Acton up to Chelmsford. Then 2B is under construction. They are going to reinstitute their regular meetings, so town staff will be attending those regular meetings. I learned today that there are plans to construct the wildlife culvert this coming month, and they're looking at the possibility of closing Route 2 westbound on the weekends of April 26th and the first weekend in May, to allow for better and more efficient, more effective construction. It would take a lot it takes a lot of time to move those structures to keep highway safe. So they're looking at the possibility of closing that road. It's going to take coordination with state police and the police departments from Acton and Concord. They had a preliminary meeting yesterday. So that's just late breaking news. It's not included in my update memo, but I think I wanted to at least share it here with the advisory committee. The InDesign panel that we've been working on, the historic interpretive panel, that we need another week on. There was a lot of disruption this past month with different for my staff, so we're needing one more week and should have that done by next Thursday. For phase 2C, concerns raised regarding the use of Junction Park in West Concord were discussed at the March 10th Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. And Concord Public Works staff is planning to order stencils so that they can add pavement markings on the sidewalks on either side of Junction Park, as well as at points where we're expecting cyclists and other people on wheels to dismount and walk. And that's in the West Concord commuter parking lot, as well as on the south side of the Main Street Commonwealth Ave intersection. Additionally, Nat Welch has done some follow-up with the Central Transportation Planning staff to discuss the trails counts, which is scheduled in May. And there'll be an opportunity to discuss that further in the agenda this evening. So I won't go into detail. And then the proposed planting plan has been prepared and sent to the owner of 38 Williams Road. They're reviewing it now. The chain link fence that was indicated to be removed has been removed by Concord Public Works Highway and Grounds crews. And we're going to be discussing the possibility of adding another section of fence near the wetlands at 38 Williams Road. And then our conservation crew this summer will prepare some wooden signs to replace the existing metal signs that are near that property. Then for the last half mile, we held our 5 site visits the week of March 15th, one with Mass DOT, and then the other 4 were scheduled with residents from the neighborhood. I really appreciate everyone coming out and the thoughtful comments that were shared and the concerns that were expressed. I did my best to relay those to our Mass DOT, and I tried to convey to you the rationale and the thinking of Mass DOT. We do have Eamon Kiernan from Mass DOT here this evening, and he'll be discussing further some of the rationale for Mass DOT's consideration of fencing along the trail. Also, that the fact that there are encroachments that will need to be addressed, and I have to coordinate that with Mass DOT to get the proper licensing and agreements in place for the house, and whether we can retain the steps that go to the conservation land or not, and what we'll need to do that if we do retain them. And then I think there's some fencing along one of the Stone Lane properties that I need to reach out and coordinate on that. And then but our design engineer for 2D, or this last half mile that will be incorporated into the construction project that will be taking place in Sudbury, has reported that they're coordinating their information with Fuss and O'Neill, the consultant in, excuse me, there's someone in the waiting room. Okay.
Go for it.
Coordinating with Fuss and O'Neill, and things are working out really well. Each consultant is saying that they're doing, that they believe the coordination is working out well. So that's a good sign, sharing information. I did not hear from Beth Sudmeyer until late today, and she also reported that Fuss and O'Neill reported our consultant was providing them with the information that they need. So it's all good on that front. We still have to do a wetlands filing with the Concord Natural Resources on to update the notice of intent and order of conditions for this section of the rail trail in Concord. And that will probably be scheduled either later in April or early May, once they file the information. And then the Community Connections Grant, the the cycling equipment for West Concord, the shelters and the bike racks. I'm still waiting to get that contract back from the state. And once that happens, I'm all set to go and order the equipment. And we'll be coordinating with Public Works to determine if they can do it in-house or if we will need to have an outside contractor. But those funds have already been set aside for the installation by the town. And the grant is for $80,000 for equipment. So I think we should do well in getting some equipment for our bicyclists who are commuting into West Concord commuter parking lot. So that's my report.
Can I just make one comment? I was at Junction Park over a few days ago. I did notice that there were a couple of school kids riding, but that's neither here nor there. But I did see that this sign is like, it's washed out. I think rain is getting in there. This is the one right by the street. So I just wanted to let you know that was, they probably couldn't read the sign, which is why the kids rode through, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt.
Are you sure they could read?
Hey, they're Concord students. They can read. We know that for sure. So both of the topics of Mass DOT and the trail counts will be coming up in the committee business. Do any committee members have any questions for Marcia with regard to her report to this point?
Marcia, do you mind just repeating the tentative dates that you said that Route 2 westbound will potentially be closed? I just want to make sure it's noted in my minutes.
The weekend of April 24th, starting at 8 p.m. Friday night and going to 5 a.m. Monday morning. And then the weekend, I think it was the weekend of May 1st and 2nd.
Same timing.
Same times.
So would that be completely closed, or would they reroute it?
Westbound, westbound.
And how will people get around there? Do you know?
They will go into the Rotary, go up to Elm Street and take a left onto Weatherby Street and then a
Okay.
right back onto Route 2.
Yeah.
That's the proposal.
I actually, I guess I was out taking some pictures a couple of days ago, and I think I met one of the foremen who explained, that they have this worked out. They're meeting with the police, and when they do the eastbound side, they're just going to shift them into the west lane, and then move the west lane again around through the Rotary and up 2A. So it's going to be a bit of a jog. And he seemed to, his thing was, we do this a lot. It should work well. Fingers crossed. So, other questions from committee members on Marcia's report? Okay, I had one question on Sudbury. Are they still on track for the tip, and how are they doing in kind of getting their stuff done? Did Beth indicate that to you?
Give me 1 minute and I will pull up her report.
Thank you.
Receipt late today.
Because obviously we're excited, or at least I'm excited.
Okay. Okay. Yes, the Boston MPO meeting this morning, the board approved the advancement of the draft transportation improvement program that includes retaining programming of the BFRT project for FY 2022.
Nice.
There will be a public comment period on the draft tip over the next month, but there have been no additional concerns by Mass DOT or MPO staff, so that's a good thing.
Okay, that's great. It's good news. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so for the next part of our meeting, which is the first topic is the Phase 2C last half mile walk. Marcia, how would you, Mr. Kiernan, like to do this?
We have not discussed how we're going to do this, so
Should we just throw Mr. Kiernan into the fray and let him?
Well, I think that, maybe a quick summary of how of that memo that you
Yeah.
wrote, Marcia.
Yeah, I think Marcia, that would be good. Yeah, thank you, Richard.
Okay, which I don't have in front of me, but basically, what I learned when prior to the week of March 15th was that when the town had prepared the 75% design back in 2016, there had been some concerns expressed at that time by residents about having a turnaround in the middle of the woods at the town line, so that Mass DOT determined that they would remove the last half mile of the trail from the construction project and end the project at Powder Mill Road, including, but to keep the tunnel installation as part of that program. At the time, since it had been removed from the construction project, the normal review that is done by Mass DOT, where multiple agencies are responsible for providing comments, that did not happen for the last half mile. And so when I collected the information from the residents and from the White Pond Advisory Committee and made the request to extend the fencing that had been proposed back in the 75% designs in 2016, it raised a level of concern for Mass DOT. And so Eamon Kernan and two other representatives from Mass DOT came out and we walked the trail. They observed the slopes, the distance houses are from the right-of-way, the extent of the right-of-way. It is a 100-foot wide right-of-way, and the amount of vegetation that was in existence, and felt that there were only 3 locations where fencing was warranted or should be required for the safety of users of the trail. Those locations were the vernal pool and the opposite side where there's a deep swale where drainage collects, and then at White Pond. And so on our site walks, we viewed those 3 locations and had several discussions. And so Eamon is here from Mass DOT to discuss the Mass DOT's rationale and thinking about fencing along the trail and their position. So Eamon.
Mr. Kiernan, welcome.
Thank you. So I really don't have very much to add other than what initiated this on my part was that the question came to me of how to put gates in the fence that was being proposed. And the conversation rolled over to that those gates would be basically exclusive to the owners of the property. And that highlighted the fact that we had a problem with fencing going on public land, public funds being doing it for exclusive use to private people. And so I started looking at it and realized that the plans were showing basically, a half mile of continuous fence on one side, and then also called out an ornamental fence in the White Pond area. And the any work that we do, has to be for the public, not necessarily for private citizens. And so that initiated the fact that we talked to Marcia, and I was, the gates obviously initiated the whole thing, but the gates weren't really the problem. Having fence for would say almost no particular reason, no reason for the public, so it was elevated in that regard. And we agreed to meet Marcia and just walk the corridor to take a look. And when Marcia said there was 3 locations, really the topography would dictate where that fence would go for the safety of the users on the trail itself. And so the designer was, when we were there, the designer was there, and we were saying, the topography will dictate where the fence goes. And so like in regards to, I talked internally and saying, do we have something written down that says where we can have fence, where we don't have fence? And there is a trail guide coming out later on this year, but even that does not say, exactly where you can have fence or where you cannot. And I wanted to get a little ahead of this before the 75% design would come out. I didn't want that everything would be shown on the 75%. We would comment on the fence and ask for it to be removed. It would show up on the 100% design where they were hoping it would go, and then we would have back and forth. I was hoping that maybe we could get ahead of it, and they would show, Concord will show on the plans where they believe the fence is justified, and then our review process will go through and agree or disagree in regard to the fence as shown. So, I mean, right now, the only instruction is that the fence needs to go there for, for safety reasons. Obviously, in regard to the neighbors' issue in and around the beach, the private beach, showing an ornamental fence for the strict use of preventing people from going onto a private beach. It wouldn't hold water. And especially like the conversations were that they wanted to put a gate on it and they wanted to be able to put their own lock on the gate. So it really got highlighted in that regard that would set up the fence for an exclusive use for private, and we can't spend public money for private use. And that's really where we are. Right now, we will see the designer will look at the topography and would show fence on it relative to safety, or at the instructions of the town as to where fence is going to be shown. However, the reviewers will look at it and may require justification for why fence is in certain areas. And like I said, I initiated the discussion on the fence so that maybe we could get some of it resolved before the 75% design would come in.
Eamon, I've also provided you with some information from the Old Picard Farm Trust to their rights of the reservation of the right to cross
Yes.
And has there been any feedback from Railroad right of way about that?
No, and no, that hasn't. It hasn't been discussed. I haven't discussed it with them. Obviously, they would need that paperwork, and I would expect that it would go along with the paperwork you were talking about in regard to the house that's encroaching on the right of way and other elements. And it actually came up for discussion today when the head of, we say, municipal right of way was made aware of the house that was encroaching, but they're not necessarily aware of any paperwork that supports that at this point.
All right. So I need to follow up with you after the
Yes.
next meeting. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure, obviously.
Clarify one thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just clarify one thing, which is the right of way is 50 feet on either side of the trail, and
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure of that, because if you were to discuss where the center line of the trail is, the center line of the trail and the center line of the right of way may not be together.
But it is a 100 foot. It is a 100
it
foot.
is 100 foot. Yeah, because I think, Marcia, when we were out there, the actual section where the rail was, that's close to where that house was encroaching,
right,
appears to be much closer to the side on the house than it does from the other side. So the two lines are not the same line.
Right.
Okay. All right. So it seems like one of the issues then is to clarify where the edges of the right of way are, just so the butters know at some point. And fencing, no private fences can be put on the public right of way. Is that correct?
Correct.
In other words, okay. All right. I just want to clarify that. Committee members, What questions do you have for Mr. Kieran before we open up to the public?
I just want to clarify the process a little bit again. So on the site walk with Marcia, as Marcia mentioned, the fencing, in your opinion, would, by your current practice, would be along the vernal pool and on the other side of the trail at that point and along White Pond. Is that correct?
It would be at the top of a slope that we would consider dangerous, that if a cyclist or somebody was to wander a little off the trail for whatever reason, that they would hit a slope that would be uncontrollable. And I mean, there's some sections where it's very steep down to the vernal pool or down to White's Pond. There's some areas there that would be considered dangerous. And there are standards for the actual slope, that when it's non-recoverable, it's considered non-recoverable if your bicycle goes over the edge and you cannot recover and get back up onto the slope.
So you're better off to hit the fence than to keep going. Is that the idea?
I mean, it's not so much that you would, obviously a fence, it would be a glance, so it would work like guardrail, I suppose, on the road.
That's how when we went on the walk, I had that sense that it's really more like a guardrail than anything else.
Yes.
It's a bike version of a guardrail on a highway.
Correct.
Now, you also seem to indicate that somehow the town could go ahead and put fences wherever we want them, and then you would go ahead and say, no, you can't have them. Is that sort of the? No,
it's more that if the town would say, if the plans came in with fence shown over a half a mile, continuous length of fence for half a mile on, we'll say I don't know if it would be the west side.
West side, right?
Yeah, the west side, that would immediately point red flags, and different review groups would look at it for different reasons, and they would come back and they say, well, why do we need the fence in the full length? Where do we actually need this fence? And that would go into the comments after a 75% set has been come in, and we may not see the results of that till the 100%. And then if the issue hasn't been resolved at the 100%, now we're starting to delay, because they're just back and forth to find out where we can have the fence or where we can't have the fence. I didn't want that it get pushed back, get closer to advertising. That better to bring this conversation up prior to the town giving me the 75% design.
And who is the person or persons who make the final determination about a fence like this?
Within DOT?
Yes.
The different review groups, and there's various groups, like the Complete Streets group may look at it from a safety standpoint. The district may look at it from a potential, is it justified that federal money would be spent on this fence, and why is it there? Excuse me a second. This was my alarm to get to the meeting.
Okay. You are ahead of yourself, aren't you?
Yes. Like, as personally as the project manager, I mean, my job is to shepherd this job through from design through to advertising. I don't actually review the plans myself, but I take all the reviews from all the different groups. So it's my job to get it to all the different reviewers and then for it to come back. I mean, the landscape may look at it, because the fence design might be of issue. There's pretty much, when I send it out, I send it to all the different groups, and the reviews come in. So I wouldn't actually know the exact person that would review it. Obviously, I would when their comments come in. And we have, most recently, Mass DOT has started using a program called Bluebeam. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but how it works is we're going paperless. So the review is on the computer, but what happens is every reviewer gets to see the comments that every other reviewer has put on the plans. And it works in that, comments won't be duplicated, or they won't be contradicted. The hope is that if one reviewer has put a comment in and a second reviewer maybe would disagree or want clarification, that they would hopefully offline have a conversation and correct the comment. So, you know, that process is working very well. And similarly, when I'm sending out for review, I post it on Bluebeam, and then I send an email to everybody who's going to review, and then the comments start compiling, and then eventually we hand that Bluebeam session over to the designer so they can see their comments.
Thank you.
Okay. So just to follow on Richard's piece, so we have to develop a 75% plan. You're hoping that we will work through the fencing ideas around the time we do the 75% plan. Is that correct?
I'm hoping that that when the fence comes in, shown on the plan, that it will go through the review process with, we'll say, 0 comments. That would be the hope.
Okay.
And it's not for me to tell the town how to design the trail or how they want it designed, but our reviewers will require, you know, they will look at it from their standpoint.
Okay, great.
If I may add, I know that DOT right-of-way had some comments about what the town might do, and the town could not put the fencing in on its own, or could not pay for the fencing because it would not be viewed as something that would be beneficial or advantageous for the right-of-way. I got that opinion or that feeling from talking with them when they were out on that site. Is that a correct interpretation?
Is it DOT rail, or was it when Linda Walsh was mentioning it?
It was Linda Walsh.
So Linda Walsh is with our municipal right of way. So she would have some very good knowledge as to how the DOT rail would respond, but she would not have the right to speak on their behalf. There are situations where that if the town wanted to, in a non-participating manner, put fence in that ultimately that the town would pay for, that can be work, you know. And I don't, this is the first time I've actually had to work in a municipal project on a right of way. I've done a right of way, but not, so there's some of the legal clarifications I wouldn't be sure on, but there is some avenues from a non-participating standpoint that can be achieved.
Okay.
But we would have to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, a big part is, like, I consider part of my job is to protect, we'll say, the federal and state funds from being spent, you know, that they have to be spent for the public. But if the town is spending their funds, there's a, you know, there's a different avenue, and I don't know how much the town can do and where they can do it.
I think the position of the town would be much the same, that we don't make improvements necessarily on public land for private purposes.
Yes.
So that's part of the conversation that we would need to have going forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Other committee member questions, comments? Okay, Mr. Kiernan, we're going to open it up to public questions. Okay, I saw Ms. Holmes first. Could you unmute? Could you unmute Ms. Holmes and name and address?
I'm Beth Holmes, 211 Stone Root Lane. Can you tell me how it is that the fencing is in place on Cottage Street next with all the abutters?
Are you asking for the question for me?
Well, I guess I'm asking, if you can answer it, that's fine. If Marcia can answer it, that's fine.
I think in the case of Cottage Street, the houses are in such close proximity to the trail itself. And then I think some of the requirements or regulations around where fences are located have evolved since that was installed as part of that contract in 2016, 2018.
Okay. I understand, Mr. Kiernan, that you're saying, you know, you don't want to have a lot of back and forth and you'd like this to all be resolved by the time the 75% design is in front of you. But the fact of the matter is there has been an inordinate amount of back and forth to date. And where we ended up in 2016 with that design was the design result of just hours of back and forth and hours of collecting comments and working the way through them. And I understand the position that you're voicing for the DOT. But with regard to the town, Marcia, you know, this is a design that was agreed upon and approved by the committee, approved by the abutters. And it's a little disingenuous to say that this all kind of fell apart because the last half mile wasn't part of the original, you know, that was kind of shelved while we were waiting for Sudbury to decide what to do. So we're now in a position where all of that time and energy and discussion is, as has so much of this process, now being redone. And, you know, you've got to imagine how frustrating this is. And I would think, and I don't know, you know, I haven't talked to other members of the abutters, but I would think that one of the things that ought to be an option is having some financial input from the town, since this was always part of a plan, protecting the abutters' land and protecting White Pond. And there were assurances made from the very beginning of this process with regard to fencing, to protect abutters and property and to protect White Pond.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Next question, or yes, that would be Jim Lyon. You need to unmute, please.
Thank you very much. Jim Lyon, 51 Mitchell Road. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. This first statement goes out to Mr. Kernan from Mass DOT. I'm a previous White Pond Advisory Committee member, and Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee member, and went through that entire process with this fencing. And yes, it is frustrating to hear that at the 11th hour here, that that whole section of fencing, which everyone had agreed upon, is coming out of the plan. You had made a comment before about, you know, there's really no reason for there to be a fence like that along the length of the pond. Well, actually, there actually is a very large reason, and that reason is to try and save White Pond from the additional use that it would be getting. I mean, it's going to become a destination point, whether we like it or not. You know, people are going to say, let's cycle or let's walk to beautiful White Pond. You know, we'll make a day of it. There's this great little private beach that we can walk to. You know, that affords us the opportunity, you know, to enjoy this resource. And unfortunately, it's just going to add to the degradation of the pond. We're already dealing with the cyanobacterial algal outbreaks. We're all dealing with the overuse in Sakeum's Cove. Unfortunately, the pond is being overused. You know, it was a very good thing that the town of Concord has taken over the private beach, or made it a public beach, I should say now. You know, they're making some very nice improvements there, but at the same time, it's just going to kind of leave this whole other section along the rail trail open to the public, you know, which is certainly not a good thing. So I just wanted to make that statement and get that on record. My next question, I guess, goes to the committee and Marcia, is like Ms. Holmes said a moment ago, that, you know, it seems that this is something that the town should, is this something that the town can help pay for? You know, since we put all this work in, this is something we all agreed upon. If not the town, because that's something that can be privately funded and added to the plan that way. And I just don't want this to, turn into something where, we had this in the plan, we took it out of the plan, and then in 2 years, it's going to be like, oh, wait a minute, we need a fence, whereas hindsight's 2020. I mean, there was the mention before of a new section of fence going along the wetlands along Williams Road. I mean, that's something that was never in the original plan. Just from the little bit of usage that it's gotten thus far, or the few years that's been open thus far, we're already realizing that additional fencing is needed. So I just wanted to put that out there and ask that question about the town and the private funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcia, do you want to respond to that question now, or?
I think I need us to do some further research on what we can or cannot do. So
Okay.
So I can't respond tonight, but I will
Okay.
look into it.
Thanks, Marcia.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kutra, you are muted.
Thank you, Nat, and thank you, Eamon, for joining us this evening. Jim Coutre, 114 Stone Root Lane. I also, as Jim Lyon, was a rail trail committee member for approximately 8 years. We've gone through a lot in terms of coming up with compromises that the town would like to have in its rail trail, and were assured previously by public meetings with Department of Transportation and designers that if we didn't want it, we wouldn't have to have it. Now, we presented a design that is more safe than what you're proposing. The slope to White Pond. Now, I'm going to talk the east side because that's where the safety hazards occur. Is very steep. It already has been used because of the tunnel that's under Powder Mill. Initially, we were told that you couldn't go past Powder Mill because that was a mass highway, federal highway requirement that trails end at a crossing roadway. That's the reason that initially that turnaround from that last half mile was there, because we thought you could go to that point. But all of a sudden that got taken out and you still built that tunnel, which ever since has enticed people to come through the rest of the way and to cross to get down to a very private beach at a very steep slope, and the erosion proves it. Now, this is something that's a safety requirement, and you're going to look at it and you're going to say, wait a minute, we have guidelines for slope alone, but you have an attractive nuisance at that pond with no lifeguards, no town ownership, no town insurance protecting the town. It's a safety and it's an attractive nuisance. Now, we all are adventurous, and we've observed an increasing use of mountain bikes climbing up that steep slope and going through the trails in that land all the way down to Sachem Cove, which is also on the east side, but at the very southern distal end of White Pond. As we as a town, we as a state, and as a federal government, we are required to protect ourselves. And you are required to protect us. And I'm asking you to look at that area around White Pond and understand why there is fencing. Now, for the design of the fencing, that wasn't an easy chore, because we look at the kind of things that were happening on the far north end of this trail, as well as on other trails. And so we went actually to DCR and looked at where they had attractive nuisance and the design of the fences that they used to protect their properties. And we copied it exactly. It's available from the town. It's in on our 75% design that we believe was final in terms of representing what the community want after over a decade of communications and meetings. So that's exactly the same. The reason that it's wrought iron is that it can't be climbed readily. And yet it provides very high visibility back to this beautiful White Pond that is only seen at that steep slope down to a private beach. You can't see it going another 100 feet south or 200 feet south. You just can't see it there. As for the gates, I'm talking about specifically now the east side, the pond side. The owners of the property have a deeded access to that across the rail and on both sides. Previously, it showed with fencing and gates. And we've provided the town with copies of that deed, which they should have researched by now, and I'm sure that they have. And we expect that our deeded property registered at the Mass Registry is honored. And so that would explain why we wanted the gate. That is private property. It's an attractive nuisance. And on a personal note, we've gone out to try and get it insured, and the insurance on an annual basis is outrageous. And even then they said that being an attractive nuisance, there is no insurance that will insure from an 8-year-old. It doesn't go by the fact that you have no trespassing, that you have a sign or a fence. The reality is that an 8-year-old is not held accountable for his decisions. So you, as a designer, I think have to consider the attractive nuisance on that side of the rail trail, the pond side, in those areas that are readily an attractive eyesight, as well as an access point with a steep slope. You also mentioned, I think, Eamon, that you look at conservation of soil. Jim Lyons just referred to a goodly number of problems. I'm here since 1987, by the way. So I've been here a long time. I've seen a lot go on in the town. And, you know, the pond shows its frailty. It's a kettle pond. It's not fed by fresh water, and it has no exit. It's a kettle pond. And, you know, it's something that's beautiful. It's just like Walden Pond. It is a sister pond. It's one of the, if I recall correctly, 8 kettle ponds in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We don't have enough.
I'm sorry, could you wrap up so other people can also speak? I just want to make sure we get to everybody's comments. Thank you.
I will end right now then.
Mr. Coutre, thank you. I just want to clarify one thing. I believe Eamon is a project manager, not the designer. Also my understanding, and I like Mr. Coutre, you mentioned that you spent a number of years on the committee and with White Pond actually coming up with this requirement for the 75% plan. I think what I'm hearing, and should be corrected, but if the 75% plan had gone to DOT in 2016, it might very well have run into the same set of issues. We don't know that, but I just want to point out that because the 75% plan was not submitted to be reviewed, it is, someone is sharing their screen.
I would ask that screen share stop.
Yeah, if the screen share could stop, please.
The
Marcia,
co-host could stop the screen share.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Nat?
Yes, Jim.
Had that 75% design gone to the state, you posed that question, it might have been.
You want
However,
to answer that?
Well, wait a minute, please, Eamon. We were told that the designers saw, once they decided to put the tunnel in, that they would take it to the state and to the federals because there was a way to put that fence in because it was an attractive nuisance and because that tunnel could not be gated off once built. And thus an attraction, and has been used exactly as we had suspected, for additional traffic to go from the existing trail, even though it says trail ends here, through that tunnel and all the way to White Pond. Thank you, Eamon.
Thank you, Mr. Coutre. Eamon?
Yeah, no, just real quick on the, and I'm not 100% sure of this, as it was explained to me, the 75% design, the last half mile was present in the set of drawings when the 75% was presented. But around that time, it had been discussed that the last half mile was not going to be part of the project. So reviewers, while reviewing the entire set of plans, knew to or ignored the last half mile. So they made no comments on the last half mile. So they did have the plans, but my understanding was that they did not comment on the last half mile. Because they knew it wasn't going to be part of the final design for that section.
Other comments? I see you, Ms. Holmes. I want to let new people in. I'll come back to you. Andrea Oki.
Hi
Name and
there.
address.
Yeah, Andrea Oki, 12 Stone Root Lane. I'm wondering, Iman, if you could just clarify two different things that I heard from you, and just want to make sure I heard them accurately. Again, both with respect to fencing along the east side of the pond where there is that private beachfront. I heard you say, one, that one cannot make improvements on public land for private benefit such that neither the town nor the private landowners could construct a fence there with private dollars. I simultaneously heard you say that the DOT will not allow public dollars to be spent for private use, such that the DOT won't sponsor that fencing either. And so collectively, what those positions mean is that there is no possible way for any party to construct fencing along that beachfront, be that private funds, municipal funds, or state funds, such that at the end of the day, all of those landowners of that trust area are forced to just bear all of the responsibility for the liability associated with that open beachfront. Is that correct?
I am, from the legality standpoint of it, I'm not 100% sure in regards to if the town's funds were being spent for the fence in the rail DOT, whether that is allowed. And that's why Marcia was saying we need to look at that further. Okay, I'm not 100% sure of that. If it was non-participating funds where the town were having fence built on private land using town funds, that can be part of the contract. Obviously, the town would get their portion of the bill for that fence on private land. But that opens up a whole other situation from a right-of-way perspective also.
Including the fact that the private beachfront directly abuts town-owned land. So again, we're going to run into the same issue of there's no solution here. And so we're backed into a corner of no fencing is possible under any scenario. So I would like to request that Marcia or whoever the relevant party is track down what is feasible and what is not feasible.
Okay, so noted, Ms. Oki. Ms. Holmes, you had a second comment? You're muted, please.
I wanted to clarify something that Mr. Kernan said, because he said that the last half mile was never looked at because the understanding was that it was not going to ever be built
As
out.
part of that project.
Okay, but therein is a misunderstanding that may get to the root of this, because that's not true. That last half mile was in great detail worked on, and the plan that you have now looked at which was the plan that was shelved or put on hold in 2016 it was created with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and it was never intended to be thrown away. The fact of the matter was that since Sudbury had not yet decided what they were going to do, the decision was made to not continue the trail beyond Powder Mill Road, because then it was a trail to nowhere. And so if there was a mistake here, it looks as though it was in leaving you, DOT, with the impression that that was never going to be built. That was agreed upon and was always going to be built at the time that Sudbury moved forward with the project. So if that plan sat dormant on a shelf with nobody paying any attention to it, lo these many years, it should not be the case that the issues that existed then and exist now in that last half mile do not get the due they deserve. And I don't know whether these are comments to be addressed to you, Mr. Kernan, or to be addressed to the town. And it sounds like maybe they're more to be addressed to the town because it sounds like a ball was dropped. But it is a misconception to say that this was never going to be built, because it was always going to be built, and the plan was worked on very conscientiously. And as I say, with a lot of energy and a lot of effort and a lot of discussion. It's just that at the time that the building was being done, there was no point, it was determined, to have this path continue to nowhere and invite people to come down to a resource that wasn't going to be protected. So that's my comment. I just want to clarify, because that's a misconception on DOT's part.
Well, just from, if I said in error that it was, when the reviewers were told that it was not going to be built, it was that the reviewers would have understood that it was not, that the project limits had changed. And
just temporarily. I mean, again,
yes,
I mean, this is.
I understand that, but they're not going to review something that was not going to be built as part of that project. So that is all. That is.
I
all.
understand
Not
what you're
that it wasn't
saying.
ever going
So
to be
then
built.
I'm looking back to the town, because then, as I say, it appears that a ball may have been dropped in not protecting all the work and all the effort that was done to then result in the protections that were so carefully mapped out.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Are there other comments? Jim, you have your hand up still. I'm not sure if you mean to.
I did indeed put it back up.
Please, Mr. Kutra, go ahead.
Thanks, Dan. Jim Cutray. While I was on the committee, this issue was discussed with the state and the designers. And we were told that the reason that it wasn't going through was because Federal Highway didn't approve of it ending at a non-cross street. And it was at that time that they also, our designers, took the concerns of that wrought iron fence because of the safety impacts at White Pond and tried to achieve federal funding for it. The town had reported back to the committee at that time, while I was on it, that they would not do that. And yet they actually decided to build the tunnel, which also would have been against federal funding unless they found an explanation for building it at that time. But that's part of the enticement to that very induced use down the steep slope to a private beach. And these are commitments that the town has worked very hard on to get approval from everyone. And that's what we bought into when we bought into the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Now it's in all our best interest to build this trail through and realize the beauty of our area and share it. Share it safely, share it without unnecessary burden, and do what was committed to from the very beginning before we allowed it to be built as phase C up to Powder Mill. And we're asking, amen, your help in promoting what the town expected and what it anticipates it will get, and to help us see a way through to achieve that safely. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Well, can I talk for 1
Yeah,
second?
I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Kieran.
So just to I've been taking notes, and I will go to my superiors and I will discuss the concerns of this committee and the public and what's being discussed here, and see what can be done. So I'm not saying, like, I came out and I said, this is what I've been told, this is what we have to do, but I'm hearing everybody, and I will bring that, and it will get discussed so that hopefully we can come to a better place.
Thank you, Mr. Kiernan. I think that's what we can really ask of you. We really appreciate you offering to do that. I see Mr. Mueller. Are you trying to speak?
Yes. Hey, Greg Mueller, 95 Stone Root Lane. And I know that some analogies have been dropped around, like drop the ball. I feel like another analogy might be rug pulled out from under. But I would say, or Eamon, I know we've talked about and use the term right of way, but from what I understand, the situation we have where we have a piece of private land being bisected by the rail is unique or relatively unique, in that we have this piece of trust property on the White Pond side. The rail trail or the rail came through, but it's connected to this other people's parcels who are members of that trust. And this is a relatively unique situation, if not unique situation, where we would hope to at least get that on the table in consideration for whatever it is, state, federal, city, the town, whatever funding here. Is that this is not a situation of, at least with what I'm talking about specifically is the wrought iron fencing on the pond side. There's no way for this neighborhood who's attached to this trust land that we cannot get rid of. We can't unload this. And so it is a burden on us, and we have a responsibility to protect it. This is not a NIMBY situation. This is a situation where the rail is literally bisecting private property, and we'd hope to have that as a consideration as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Are there other comments or questions? I'm trying to keep track of who's speaking or who wants to speak. I don't see anybody else. Is there anybody else? Okay.
I just have one question.
Yes,
When does the town, Marcia or Eamon, at White Pond, does the town own any of that land between the pond, or that's where the private land starts at the end, at the side, right away toward the pond?
Well,
The drop off,
a
is that
portion of-
private land? Once you get off the railroad, it's basically private land.
once, we haven't surveyed that to know.
Okay.
The right of way extends onto a portion of that land. It might even incorporate some of the slope. I don't know where that property line is. The town's property does not begin until the slope goes up again.
Okay, beyond that, where the fence would be.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
If you recall where the stairs were, the timber steps in the side of the slope, that's approximately where the town land begins.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, who's trying to speak?
Sorry, Greg Mueller, 95 Stone Lane again. Eamon, when you talk about the responsibility of the state, and you talk about topography dictating the fence location, what are the factors? Is it only a safety factor? Because I think that was the only example we've talked about, or are things like erosion, land erosion, hill erosion, are those factors as well?
So when I was discussing it, we'll say the first round of fencing would be from a safety standpoint. That's very easy to locate. Yep. There would also be situations from environmental standpoint. So if the argument could be made in regard to erosion or other environmental factors, then yes, fence can be justified in that regard also. I can't speak for our environmental group, but that is a possibility.
Okay.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
how
Mueller.
long, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
go ahead.
apologize.
Yeah,
One
go
more
ahead.
Question. How do you, is there an aperture or that distance? You said the 50 or 100, 50 from either side, 50 feet of either side of the fence, I'm sorry, of the trail. Is that literally what is the view of the state, or can you go 55 feet to one direction or 100? Like, or yeah.
What do you mean? I apologize, but what do you mean 55? Can we go 55 feet? What?
So from what I understand, the state is responsible for 100 or 50 feet from either from center line of the trail.
We're responsible for, we say, the 100 feet from right-of-way line to right-of-way line. The center of that is not necessarily the center where the center line of the trail is at the moment.
Okay.
Right of way is 100 feet wide from Powder Mill to Sudbury, basically, or beyond.
Okay.
Right.
The reason I was asking in some ways is that the drop off on this beach property is eroding pretty fast. And what we may need to do is figure out where the state cares or stops caring about erosion into the pond. Because I think that might be something relevant.
So thank you, Mr. Mueller. Mr. Kernan, I assume as you do your follow-up, you will work with Marcia on the questions back and forth. And Marcia, is it the committee that would kind of get an update in this topic on a regular basis so people could comment on it? Do we set aside a special meeting for discussing it? I also want to point out, Jim used the term attractive nuisance, which I always love as a legal term. But that might be another factor to kind of throw into the conversation. And so how do you see this kind of trying to stay ahead of this issue? You've already said you talked to your team. How do you see this unfolding over the next few months between you and Marcia?
You're asking me, how do I, obviously, we will have further conversations with Marcia. The 75% plan set is coming in the middle of April. I mean, the town can decide to show on that design. We can only respond to what we see on a set of plans.
Right.
Obviously, like I said, I want to try and get this discussion, and we're having it right now, to try and get that information so that what goes onto the plans would reduce the back and forth after the set of plans comes out.
Right.
So I mean, obviously we're now close to when the 75% plans would get issued. I expect that I'll be having conversations with Marcia, maybe not tomorrow, but definitely next week. And I will be having conversations tomorrow, talking about what happened today, to see what more can be done. I do have one question. It was very concerning, we'll say, in regards to the gate on the wrought iron fence, that it was being discussed that the town or the association would want to put a lock on that gate. And is that still the case? Because that would be, I believe that would be a deal breaker. There is no way a lock could be put on a gate on DOT rail. So, is the association still considering the fact that they want to put a lock on that gate? If the wrought iron fence was to go in, and if a gate was able to be put in across the property of the association, would it be the intent of the association to want to put a lock on that gate?
So, Eamon, this is Greg Mueller, 95 Stone Root Lane. I would say, I'm not going to answer the question directly because we have not had a chance to talk amongst ourselves for that. But I would say that the factor of the gate, the lock on the gate, and the fence were all just these were ideas, these were considerations that we've talked at length with the town and the committee about over these last 10, 12 years. So we can come back with a position, but it's all of these variables are moving, I think, at a pace that, at least on this phone call, I'm not sure that we can specifically address, but I would also say that we're open. Right now, when we started the phone call, you basically said there's no fence. And if you heard Andrea Oki asking, and by the way, there's no fence possible ever to be built by private, by town, or by state. We also heard this, or I heard this on this call. Right now, your question of, oh, what about the lock on the gate is a little bit, we'd have to come back because this is it's a 31 or 28 member trust that we can come back to you certainly on that.
Well, the reason I asked it was that this whole issue got highlighted to me when I was asked the question about gates in the fence, and that's what highlighted it for me and started this whole situation.
Okay.
So, I can go to and talk to others and find out what we can do, but I know about the fact that, yes, you said it was discussed, and ultimately that was something that perhaps you wanted. But if I'm presenting that, I believe that I will get shut down completely. So that's why I'm asking the question.
That's actually a really good information for us to know. You know what I'm saying? That that might dictate our decision, obviously.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Thank you, Mr. Kiernan. I think a couple of other people want to speak. Greg, you are still one of the trustees of the trust?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to let Mr. Kiernan know that you are one of the trustees.
Yeah, as is in the three of us are on this call.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep.
Did anybody else want to respond? I see, Andrew, could you wait for a minute? I'm going to let Mr. Galper speak first, and then go ahead, Mr. Galper.
Thank you. Josh Galper, 65 Stone Root Lane. A question for Mr. Kernan. So my understanding you were saying is environmental reasons, or environmental protection would be a fair reason to install a gate. Is that accurate?
No.
Okay.
What was presented to me was that they wanted that the association, or the trust, wanted a fence along that area, and they wanted two gates, one over I don't know the exact locations, but there was two potential gates located to stop people. One will say going down the slope and going to the private beach, but that the gate would be installed so that obviously the association or the trust can have access to their beach. But it was also discussed with me that if that gate went in, that they would later on like to be able to put a lock on it. Gotcha. So, and that's what highlighted it for me, because that highlights the fact that it's for exclusive use only.
Gotcha. So if I may rephrase, did I hear then correctly that protection of environmental resource would be a reason to install a fence to prevent public access?
I think that was it.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, potentially.
And if we were to show, which I think many of us have examples of, collections of trash on that property, on the trust property, would that contribute to helping you make a determination about whether a fence was worthwhile?
And like I said, it wouldn't, and it would not be me, because this would go to our environmental group. Right. And I would think that anything you can come up with can support your argument in regard to environmental protection.
Very good. I have some very nice photos. Marcia, I'll send those your way. Thank you.
Ms. Oki, again.
Hi, Andrea Oki, 12 Stone Root Lane. I'd like clarification on timing moving forward. Did I hear that the 75% plan is due to the state in approximately 2 weeks? Is that correct?
I'm not sure of the exact date. I don't know if Marcia knows better, but I expect to see the 75% plans in April.
Yes. Okay. And this group does not meet again for another month or so. Is that also correct?
We officially have our next meeting, but I was going to have a discussion with the committee openly about whether we should perhaps plan an interim meeting after data has been gathered, but I have to look to our advisor, Marcia, on the process of doing that and staying within the appropriate open meeting laws, et cetera. It's not my choice.
I also heard Iman say, unless fencing is included in the 75% plan, it is effectively off the table. If it's not in the 75% plan, there's no way to get it into the 100% plan. In light of all of those factors, Marcia, are you able to make a commitment that all of the fencing will remain in the 75% plan that will be submitted prior to this group being able to reconvene again?
I'm not sure I can make a commitment to have it the entire half mile on both sides in the plan.
And what sort of what
I could commit to what was in the original 75%. I can commit to the original 75% design.
And the original 75% design did include fencing on both the east side and the west side. Is that correct?
It had some fencing on both the east side and the west side, but not for the entire half mile on both sides.
Okay. Are you able to commit to preserving that entire original 75% plan with respect to the fencing?
I think that is asking too much right now. I have to think about that a little bit.
Right. Because it may not be Marcia's final call on what gets put in there. So
I find it disconcerting then that what you're effectively saying is that this entire conversation is going to be discarded. And at the end of the day, this group has no recourse, because if it's removed from the 75% plan submitted in 2 weeks, we're out of luck.
I didn't hear Marcia say it was an all or nothing. It's okay. What I heard her say was she can't commit this evening to what she can put in that plan. So perhaps the question is, when should we reconvene to have a conversation about what can go in there? Because the advisory committee is that, it's an advisory committee. We don't make, the final decisions. We merely advise. So Richard, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just about to ask when the 75% plan was due. It's good to find out. I guess my personal opinion is that either we can have another meeting prior to the submission of those plans, and the committee can make an advisory recommendation, or we could do it tonight. I think it's a little difficult tonight to see that. However, I do think that the primary issue is related to protecting White Pond. I mean, I can see a public interest in doing that. The other issues of fencing, to my mind, are not as pressing. And I don't think that a case can be made.
But they are to the abutters. Sorry to interrupt you.
I'm just giving my personal opinion that the case can be made that that's a requirement to the same level that it is at the White Pond issue. So it could be that portions of the fencing that were on the earlier plan should be put on the plan, so at least the discussion can continue. I do agree, if it's not on the plan, we can't talk about it anymore. So I think we either have to decide if, as a committee, we want to make that kind of recommendation, or have another meeting in the next week or two to do the same thing.
Mr. Kutra, I see you, but I'd just like to ask the committee members just to respond to this particular point.
I mean, we're not under any obligation to do anything, I suppose, but I do feel the pain of the neighbors who've been involved in this for years to see that things have significantly changed.
Right.
I agree. This is Adrienne Boardman. I think even just to make sure that dialogue is continued between the committee, between Marcia, Eamon, and all the abutters that have taken the time to weigh in, not only tonight, but over the past 10 years, it seems. I think that if we can find a way to have an open dialogue just to discuss what folks are able to learn between tonight and even a week from now, I think we'll at least make sure everyone is aware of what's being submitted. And I think that's the least that we can give to the abutters is awareness of where the town is landing on a 75% plan submission.
Other committee member comments? Okay, Mr. Kutra, you've had your hand up the longest, and I see Mr. Galper and Ms. Holmes next.
Thank you. There is a great deal of confusion every time Marcia speaks about the plans. She presented to us, the neighborhood and the committee at their last meeting last month, a set of plans that were 75% that show that wrought iron fence protecting the east side of the plan. When she answered the questions that Beth Holmes had just asked, as well as Andrea, I'm sorry, she was not specific as to what plan she has. And she even said at our last meeting, she wasn't sure. So I want to make sure that the plan that we're talking about has been the plan that was shown at the last committee meeting, which shows that wrought iron fence, shows the fence protecting the steep erosions on the east side of the trail along all the visible areas of the pond on that east side. So that means it starts up along about the Millers for protection and goes beyond.
Okay. Mr. Kuchar, thank you. And I would just point out that it was between the last meeting when Marcia shared the plan and this meeting that we got information from the Department of Transportation that changed all this. And
it didn't change the plan that we're talking about, Nat. That's what I want, is specificity of what plan Marcia is talking about.
Okay, got it. So what plan would be presented as a 75% plan? And I
downloaded it from the town website.
Right. So I think part of what's where we are right now is Marcia has said she needs some time. And I think as Adrian Boardman had said and others, it feels like we should probably have another session of this committee to discuss what gets submitted. Mr. Kiernan has been kind enough to say he would carry some of our concerns up the ladder. And I think, you know, we then wait to see where the chips fall and react to that. But I would like to ask Marcia what her, you know, what her thoughts are and where she wants to go.
Well, as far as the wrought iron fence along the White Pond, I would definitely, those are part of the 75% design plans that were prepared in 2016, and I would continue to advocate for that. But I think there were a lot of questions asked this evening that I want to do some follow-up research on with Mass DOT, with their railroad right-of-way, and have a better understanding of what federal highway can and cannot do, and explore what the town might be able to do in terms of participation for the future before I commit to anything tonight.
Right. Got it.
And I think I need to do those. I need to do my due diligence to be able to be realistic and support all of that. I can't go forward with something that I know is not right. So, and then as far as the other locations for fencing, I still have questions about the chain link fence. I think we need to have a further conversation about some of the fencing as it's been shown, but I don't know if the chain link would be beneficial where it's located. I know it's on the property line for between the three of the abutters on Stone Root Lane and the right-of-way. It means that part of those trees are going to be removed. And so I would like to be able to talk to those residents to make sure that that's what they want to see happen before we go too far down the road, and whether that needs to be included or not. So those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about, and being pressed to commit to doing something tonight is not something I'm willing to do.
Okay, it's your call. Ellen Glendon has her hand up.
Yes, this is Ellen Glendon, 64 Stone Root. I am one of the trustees of the abutted land that the beachfront property that we're discussing. And I would just like to point out that there's been a lot of discussion about how this fence will protect, is requested by a private group. Our goal is to protect the beachfront. We know that historically there is a big problem with erosion. We've been through this. The National Resource, the Conservation Committee has done work on it. The White Pond has done work on it. I believe the fence will also protect the pond, and that's what we're talking about. There is town land, there is private land, there's beachfront property that is now owned by the town, which used to be the private White Pond Association. So as erosion occurs, it damages the health of the pond, and the pond suffers. And as we know, there's been bacterial problems for several summers. So the issue is not of just protecting the beachfront for the private owners. It's for protecting the entire pond, of which there are many, many owners. So I just wanted to make that clear. And I also wanted to ask a question about the fence. So I believe this might be directed to the Mass DOT, to Mr. Kerman. So the fence is meant to be a deterrent for people going into that attractive nuisance, that easy access beachfront property. How are the owners whose property that is, who have a right of way deeded to them to access their own land, how are they supposed to access that if there is not a gate? And if there is a gate that's easily opened, how is that supposed to stop the public from going in there?
So that would be a legal question that I could not answer. That obviously the gate would be there. What I heard was when somebody mentioned putting a lock on it, which obviously you're saying that it has to be set up so that only certain people can use it. If that's the case, the gate cannot be on DOT rail property.
Right.
That's what it is. And then if this fence moves onto private land, it's private land. You can do what you want on private land, but getting that built as part of this project becomes a situation where it could be non-participating costs by the town to pay for the fence as part of this contract. But then there's a right of way element in regard to easements or otherwise that the town would have to get to secure rights to construct fence on private land. And if it's not federal dollars that are being used to put this fence in, then it's something that can be done. However, we have the right of way issue in regards to getting the rights for the contractor to enter that land to do the work. But I do want to address something that was said earlier, in that if fencing is not shown on the 75% plans, that it could never be shown on the 100% plans. That is not true. It is not a preferred method. We don't like to see additional elements added to the plans when we're deep into the review process. However, the plans are evolving all the way through to final design and advertising. Like I said, it's not preferred, but it's not a situation where if something is added after 75% or something that cannot be added, and it can. It's not preferred, but it can be added.
Thank you, Mr. Kiernan. Marsh, can I ask a point of order, please? Do we need to vote to have a special meeting between now and our next meeting, or can we, as committee chairs, call a meeting, post it publicly, and hold it?
Oh, yeah, the latter, not the
Okay,
former.
all right, great. I'd like to bring this section to a close. We do have another topic to cover. This is a complicated piece. Ms. Holmes, I know you had your hand up and have had it for a while. Do you have a short comment of something new with regard to this?
Yeah, I have two quick things. I just want to thank Mr. Kernan for bringing up again that there is a way maybe for the town to finance fencing. And that's something that I think you referenced someone named Linda Walsh, who would be involved in that, who would have something to say about that, and that you couldn't really speak to what DOT would do. But I don't want anyone to lose sight of the fact that there is a possibility, perhaps, that the town could actually bear some of the finances, if not all of the finances, of the fencing. The other thing I just want to say, because I think it's being lost in this, certainly we're very concerned in this neighborhood with White Pond and protecting that resource. But I don't think, and I'm going to speak for myself, and I'm sure that there are other abutters on the west side of the trail who would agree with me that we are not letting go of, we don't want to let go of the issue, the question of fencing on our properties as well. And that, I think, has kind of been lost in the conversation tonight.
Can I just clarify one thing, Ms. Holmes? You're not saying fencing on your properties. You're saying
No.
fencing on the side of the trail
You're correct.
near your property. Thank you.
Yes, and the 75% and the plan that we looked at the last meeting from 2016, I believe, had fencing on our sides, not on our property, but it had. Am I incorrect, Marcia? I believe that.
It showed a continuous.
Yes, okay, all
post
right.
fence for the half mile on the western side.
Yeah.
So,
Not the whole half mile, Eamon. There was
Okay.
some of the land parcels closest to Powder Mill Road. There are 4 properties.
Okay, but very close to,
Yeah.
close to the.
all right, so when you talk about the original plan, Marcia, when you said, that you would think about whether or not for the 75%, that is the plan that you would include with the fencing shown, is that the plan to which you were referring, the one that we looked at the last meeting?
The only plan that is in existence of the 75% design is the one that was prepared in 2016. And I want to get further information before I commit to 100%.
I understand. Just wanted to make sure we were talking about the same plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I will, if any committee members have anything to say, any other comments from the committee? Otherwise, I'm going to bring this topic to a close for now. We will work with Marcia to come up with a time and a place to have a further discussion about this particular thing. And I'm sure Marcia is very happy about that. I would like to thank everybody for their input and for sharing their thoughts, especially Mr. Kiernan. And I greatly appreciate, Mr. Kiernan, your working with the abutters and people around White's Pond, and your offering to take some of their concerns up the ladder, for lack of a better term. And I greatly appreciate your time this evening and joining us. So
Can I make one quick, and I'm not sure if this is correct, and Marcia, you can say this, that if you continue this portion of the meeting to a date that you now choose, I don't believe you have to advertise it again, because everybody that is here gets that date. I don't know if that's something you want to avoid.
I got to let Marcia guide us on that, because she has to do work before the meeting.
Right. This is not a public hearing, and
Okay.
so we don't have to set it to a date.
Okay.
But we do have to follow certain rules, as I've learned over the last few months, Mr. Kiernan. So I try to be very careful about what I say. Thanks again. I would like, if everyone could stay, I would very much like others to hear our next speaker, our next presenter. We've received a request from Miss Alana Honan of 55 Everett Street. Ms. Honan grew up in Concord and has returned to teach art at the middle school to 8th graders. And I'd like to thank her for her service and coming back to the town. It's nice to have people come back. And she has approached the committee with an idea for a project involving the tunnel under Powder Mill Road. And so we've invited her this evening to share her thinking. And she has asked that the committee consider recommending her idea to the Board of Selectmen, who would be one of the ones to have the final say in addition to other players. But Ms. Honan, welcome.
Thank you, Nat. I appreciate that. Marcia, do you have the presentation?
Give me a minute. I have to pull it up.
Marcia's trying to hide the plans, the 2016 plans, and replace them with your presentation.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I just wanted to thank you all so much for the opportunity to speak with you during your monthly meeting. Like Nat said, I'm a local Concordian. I'm teaching at Sanborn right now for the 8th graders. I actually just finished my practicum today, which is exciting, but I am still working there. I'm planning to still stick around. to see how this might play out. But I'm really excited and honored to present my idea for this social justice themed community mural project along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. So Marcia, if you go to the next slide, please.
She's working at it. We could have some music play. Marcia, how are we doing with that?
I'm not that crafty. I'm not that good.
Yeah. Okay. Marcia, are you still with us? Yep.
No. I'm
Okay.
still with you. I'm just trying to, I'm going to have to put myself on permanent voice so that before I can switch over to the Zoom, and I'm not able to put it forward without doing certain, I might have to come back and forth. So bear with me, please.
Okay.
We asked Marcia to do this extra duty tonight.
Yeah, we've all been doing this for a year. It's totally normal now.
You think I would know by now. Okay.
If you do full screen, Marcia, would that make a difference?
Can you see them?
Oh,
There we
yeah,
go.
that's
Yeah,
great.
beautiful. Nice.
Okay.
Next slide, yes. Thank you so much.
So
And now draw the
you ready
down
for the
arrow.
next slide?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Oh, phooey. It's going to be one of those times.
Sometimes if you just kind of hover above it, there's a gray bar that'll pop up that you can do next.
Not once I put it into slide mode, so I'm going to have to leave it in PowerPoint, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's okay.
So, hang on. See if I can share this one. Okay, good.
And the next one. All right. So my mission / vision for this project is to create a painted mural with the theme of social justice along the walls of the concrete overpass tunnel that runs under Powder Mill Road. I will get into more information about specifically where later in my presentation, but the tunnel is located at the current end of the trail in Concord. I feel as though this location of the tunnel is really noteworthy, as a potential social justice themed mural in the spot really could serve as an important landmark that signifies the trail's overall belief for inclusive recreational activities, as well as the safety and well-being of the communities it runs through and the people who use it. A mural with a social justice theme that represents and celebrates all diverse populations within Concord, students from Boston, surrounding communities along the trail, such as Lowell, I believe really would spark this important, engaging conversation. My vision for the mural project is to include the students of both CCHS, the high school, and CMS, and the Boston students within both schools in the artistic design and creation of the mural. Additionally, as a future art educator, I hope to use this as an opportunity to expand my skills as a pre-service teacher by working with the students within the Concord district. Who I once was, a Concord alum, I went to PBD. And I really believe that this would be an incredible experience for the Concord students. It would give them a chance to use their voices and creativity to make a real difference in our community. And such opportunities, we can all attest, has been really lacking throughout this challenging year. It's been very challenging and isolating, like I said, not only due to the social distancing, but just really due from the lack of crucial community events like sports and graduations and fundraisers. So I think that this experience could create lasting connections, not only locally, but within the communities along the trail too, like Chelmsford, Acton, Lowell, and so on. I cannot emphasize enough the benefits also of a school and community partnership. This mural project would be the start of an ongoing creative partnership between the Concord School District and the Bruce Freeman Trail. And what I really mean by this ongoing partnership is that more murals could be completed in different locations, or the mural itself could be updated every couple of years, which would ultimately increase public awareness of the trail throughout the Boston area and potentially increase donation volunteer rates, which would support the maintenance and growth of the trail. Next slide, please. So I've been really inspired by the events of the past year, such as the murder of George Floyd that spawned global protests against police brutality and worldwide support of the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as hate crimes against the AAPI, the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, and just the negative rhetoric from political powers about the LGBTQ community. The list really unfortunately goes on, which is why I hope to create this important mural addressing the theme of social justice, the conversation that comes from public art. Murals such as the one you see here should not really be trends, but these ongoing conversations. So art can be used really as this accessible tool for communication, raising awareness about social issues and initiating this positive change. I really believe that a social justice themed mural would have a similar impact within the Concord community and the trail itself. I will show a few Photoshop images of my ideas thus far for the mural painting, but I really hope to call upon the students of Concord to generate this official theme and final design of the mural with them. I also feel like this is important to address why I'm doing this. As an artist and as a Concord resident who grew up attending these Concord schools, I'm excited to have the opportunity to give back to my community. I'm also interested in the experience this could have for me as an educator, like I said, but by organizing and leading the Concord students in our mural painting efforts, it would really be an invaluable experience for me. Next slide, please. So here is more on the specific location of the tunnel within Concord and the picture of the tunnel itself that I took. And the tunnel is at the current end of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. It's really a noteworthy location to make this powerful statement of social justice. And I really think that this statement would make a positive, lasting impression on viewers or visitors to the trail. Next slide, please. So this is the current state of the tunnel. It's really a welcome location for graffiti and loitering. I went there to measure it, and the walls of the tunnel have been spray painted on and written on. And I just really think a mural would clean up the location and beautify it. I envision really using bright colors and engaging imagery that is appropriate and suitable to my theme, but while also making the tunnel a more inviting location. It would also take extra measures to the limited maintenance of the mural. I've been in contact with a mural artist from Dorchester, and she's advised me about this special type of varnish coating that she's been using on her murals, and it really helps prevent from new graffiti and damage from weather and sunlight. But I will get more into more research later on about specific materials that I will need to get. But next slide, please. And this is my ideas for the mural that I have so far. I really, like I said, I really want to call on the students to come up with the final idea, but I was thinking of doing two sides of the tunnel. And the one side was something about together we rise, and the opposite side was kind of bringing in the idea of the trail and just the recreational activities on it, and then together we ride. And today I met with the principal of CMS, and then the superintendent is also aware of my project. And I will hopefully receive student volunteers from the CMS Art Club, which I co-run with my supervising practitioner, the Unified Arts Club at CCHS, which is an art group started by 3 students, one from Concord, one from Carlisle, and one from Boston. The CMS Rise Club, which is the Race Identity Society Empowerment Club, and the Interact Club, and really just any other interested student volunteers. So this is what I talked about with the principal. And I hope to work on the mural with the students after school and during a few weekends. Additionally, I hope to reach the entire Concord community through contacting the library, maybe the Chronicle and Wicked Local. By bringing together all of these different groups, I really hope to commemorate this challenging year we've all collectively had and create a really newfound sense of community and collaboration. Next slide, please. So this is the people that I'm hoping to include, like I said, the CMS students. And next slide, please. So these are the steps, my time frame that I have ideas about so far. I'm really new to this whole process, so I'm not really sure how this plan will play out, but I got the first one done, present to the committee April 1st. And then I have been talking with the principal, and then I'm going to create some sort of Google form to collect volunteers. If I get too many, I'm going to make a Google form request for students that's really complicated, so I don't get as many volunteers, hopefully, or if I get too little, the opposite effect, I'll reach out to those clubs like I stated. But I think I wouldn't have an issue with that. But that's really my time frame. I'm hoping to have some sort of COVID permitting final reception by the end of the school year in June. The next slide. So lastly, I'm really hoping to enlist your help, like Nat said, of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee to write 2 letters of support on behalf of me and my art mural proposal. One of them is a letter to the town once you have voted on my proposal, in hopes that the town also approve it. And the other is for the Newell Flather Public Art Grant that I've nominated myself for. But it's going to be announced sometime this spring. But I would really greatly appreciate if the committee would be willing to do that for me and support my social justice art mural. And that is it. Thank you. Thank you, Marcia. Appreciate it.
There was one more piece that will have to be done, and that's getting the permission from Mass DOT, since this is their own, in their ownership. I'll be following up and getting all of that information so that we are ready to go forward and have permission.
Yes, I'm learning this as I go, so. Oh, Nat, I think you're muted.
Any comments or questions from committee members?
I love this idea, and I think it's so good that you took the initiative to see a space that could be like recreated for good within the community and figure out how you can bridge that gap between students and the young population and other community members. So I applaud you for doing that. One question I have, just both for my own interest and also to make sure I note it correctly in the minutes from the meeting, is your plan to have the student population create the design idea? And I know you mentioned you have contacts with some muralists, it seems, that would actually execute on it, or the student population also be the ones that are helping you to execute on the artwork in the tunnel, should this be approved?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm trying to make that as clear. I'm hoping for both. The idea was like, oh, the tunnel is a 0.5 mile walk from the back of Sanborn. It's 10 minutes, super easy. I'm hoping the kids would be willing to walk down there with me, the volunteers who are interested. I'm hoping to use my teacher expertise to give them guidelines and have this idea with my slogan, I guess, together we rise, together we ride. But then I guess the symbolism and the imagery, I'm hoping that the kids will come together and figure that out. But that is my initial plan. The girl who I had reached out to, the Dorchester muralist, she was like, that sounds complicated, good luck. But I was like, I think I'll be okay. I've only been a teacher for a year, but I hope that it will go well. I'm reaching out to these groups around CMS and CCHS who just know what they're doing. They're they're invested and passionate, so hopefully it'll be okay.
Thank you. Other committee members? Yes. Yeah, Carol.
I just had a question about, as I recall the tunnel, it was quite dark. And
that's the same question my dad had.
But how's artwork going to look in sort of a dingy, dark, damp?
Right. Well, I would prime the walls first. It'd be this white primer, and then I would really be limited palette to only really brightening colors. It's like lightening up a basement. You just kind of use light colors on the walls, and then it would brighten it up. I don't hope to paint the ceiling. It's like a trifold of the top of the tunnel. But if I had to, and if it was still super dark in there, I would maybe paint that white as well, which would brighten it up. But I went in there in the natural daylight, and it was on a cloudy day when I went. It's pretty good. So I think that if it was a bright colored mural, I think it would be okay.
No, I like the idea. I was quite surprised that there was graffiti there already.
I was too. I just went there 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh, I mean, one of the graffiti was "I miss people," and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, you can see why this would entice
you find out who did that and get them involved in the project.
I know, really.
They expressed a good sentiment.
Yeah, there was a couple beer cans. I don't think that it was middle schoolers, so we'll see.
We can blame everything on middle schoolers, can't we?
Very true.
Other committee members?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Dorcas, go ahead, please.
I'd just like to know who has the approval for the final design.
I guess I will have the final approval. I have my BFA in painting, so I feel like I have an eye for it. So the final design, once the kids come up with it, and then I will put it together and Photoshop those images that we looked at before. I did. So whatever we come up with, I will send over, obviously, and then get the final approval from you guys, but not going without through me.
We are, well, we are an advisory board, so we could advise approval. I think, I don't know, that's a great question. If you were going to paint a nude in there or something.
Yeah, no, none of that.
Would that be an issue? Maybe I'll ask our select board liaison, Terry Ackerman. Do you have a comment on that?
I think it's a great question, and I really don't know the answer. But we'll find out.
You can figure it out when she comes to see you guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as Marcia said too, I think the state would have some role potentially. I think that the themes that you outlined would be approved by most people, and maybe individual elements might be problematic. You never know with art.
Right.
I think if that's the theme, I think you're definitely on the right track to be able to get approval, and certainly having a mural there will make it a better environment for everybody, and it will probably lessen and if not completely prevent graffiti.
That's what I'm hoping.
And I think that's a good point, that when you go in front of the select board, I think you should ask them what is the final approval process and who has to say what. And Mr. Kiernan is here. I'm not sure he has approval on tunnel painting, but do you have a comment, Mr. Kiernan?
I do. I think it's a great idea. And what I'll do is I'll make a commitment to talk to the district to find out who needs to, this idea, who gives approval on the state end, and maybe who Elena should talk to. And ultimately, does the approval go to the town? And maybe try and tie down what the process is that needs to be followed. I don't know, Marcia, have you done anything in that regard at all with the district?
No, I haven't started that process because
Okay,
I was
so-
waiting for this meeting and to hear Elena's presentation.
Yeah, and obviously her timeline, if we could have a state timeline like that, we'd be getting everything built. But what I will try to do is find out, I mean, I would expect it would be part of the permit process. And I'll just find out who needs to be talked to and what paperwork needs to be filled out, and how likely it is to be approved. We obviously don't want Elena to be doing a lot of work if immediately it's going to be very difficult to achieve the permit. But
good
I'll
point.
try and get an understanding of that, and I'll get back to Marcia, and then she can pass that information on.
That's great. Marcia should be our contact point, I think, for that. That's good. Yes, Mr. Kutra, how are you?
Good, thank you. Elena, you've got a great project in mind. There are a number of places along rail trails, the Assabet Rail Trail, et cetera, that have done murals. And they found some things work better than other things. And the state should be able to point you out to some of those things so that you get some additional background.
Okay.
But good luck.
Thank you.
And Nat,
yes,
this is Greg Mueller. I just had a quick question, Ilana. Had you considered at all including, in the spirit of inclusion, any students from like the Hanscom Middle School?
I have
Just
not.
including-
I wasn't even aware there was a school there. To be perfectly honest.
As part of our community, we've had a few sort of, I'd say I've heard ad hoc experiences and interactions, and they're real people. And I would encourage you to reach out and see if you might be able to include kids from the Air Force Base.
Yeah, I also contacted Tracy Dunn. She's a teacher at CCHS, an art teacher.
Yep.
And she runs this unified arts group at CCHS, but then she also does an art group with kids in Lowell. So we were hoping to bring those kids in as well. They seemed that they would be interested in joining. So I'm very open to like more volunteers from all over. That's kind of my idea of the community project.
With the assumption the state says go ahead. Yes.
Yes, with the assumption, yes, obviously.
Right. I actually had a question, Alana, and you and I have talked a little bit about this, which is if the state says, yes, we can do it, but it's going to take 2 months to kind of get everything lined up and so on, what does that do to your ability to do the project? So I'm just thinking about if things get in the way,
Okay.
how does that affect your time frame?
Like until June. I live in Concord, so I'm not going
Not going
anywhere.
But let's say it took until July to get something done, or August. Would next year be also a possibility for you? Do you not know where you're going to be?
I don't know where I'm going to be. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm hoping to move back to Boston, but not sure yet.
Okay. Okay.
But I mean, my parents live in Concord, so I would always be back and forth. I'd be willing to come back.
Okay. So I think what I'm saying is the idea is a good one if you're going to be in the neighborhood, but it happens to take longer because the wheels of government don't always turn swiftly. Although I think Mr. Kiernan is learning from you how to do a faster project. I would hope that you would still be open potentially to coming back if it took longer.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Yes, JWBMD. I don't know who you are, but please go ahead.
It's not directed to this particular interesting project. It's
Name and address, please.
Yeah, name and address.
I'm Dr. John Blute, Briar Hill Road, Acton, Mass.
Welcome.
Thank you. If I could raise a new topic about something that recently happened, I think those who are very familiar with and want to protect the rail trail would be interested in it. So if that,
Does this relate to, I'm sorry, does this relate to the art project?
No, it does not. And that's what I
Okay.
wanted to say.
Okay, so if you would please hold off for a few minutes. We'd like to finish off this and then I'll be sure to call on you. So thank you. Any other questions or comments on the art project?
So do we want a motion?
I was going to suggest, can we have a motion to approve Ms. Honen's tunnel art proposal and recommend that the select board review and approve the project as proposed? Any comments on that motion?
So moved.
So moved. Okay. So now a roll call vote on that, on the approving and recommending the select board review and approve the project. Ms. Boardman?
Approve.
Approve. Mr. Follander?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Soden?
Aye.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
And Mr. Welch says yes also. The motion is passed unanimously. The second motion before the committee, this is suggested for discussion. Can we, a motion to have the committee chairs draft and send a short letter to the Newell Flather Public Art Grant Agency indicating the committee's support for the project and Ms. Honen's grant application?
So moved.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Boardman?
Approve.
Ms. Follander?
Yes.
Mr. Follander, sorry. Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Childcare.
Thank you. Mr. Soden?
Aye.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
And Mr. Welch says aye also. That second motion is passed unanimously by the committee. Ms. Honen, thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciate you coming up with the idea and getting us going. And we will draft a letter and send it to both. And thank you again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda is the trail usage count update. This will be fairly short. We will be counting, I'll give the dates in a second, in conjunction with the, what is it, Marcia, CTPS?
CTPS, yes.
CTPS, I don't remember what it stands for, but there are folks who do this work, have set up 5 days in May to do counting. In conversations with them, 3 locations were selected in Concord. One at the Neshoba Brook Bridge, which is just actually northwest of the MBTA station. There are some benches there. We would do a count there. The second count would be not too far away, but at Route 62, where the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail crosses Main Street and Com Ave. We would do it on the Assabet Riverside. There's a bike station, and we'd capture people there. And then the third location would be at Powder Mill Road. Those three locations were selected to kind of give us a full view. Counting is voluntary, so we're hoping to get volunteers. The spring count dates, and this we're going to, Marcia, I'd like to put this up on the website so everyone has it, and it's available. The count days are weekdays, Tuesday, May 18th, Wednesday, May 19th, and Thursday, May 20th. There are two official count periods, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And on one day, I believe he said was Thursday was suggested we try and do 2 to 4 to catch school usage on the trails. On the following weekend, the 22nd and 23rd, the count time is between 12 noon and 2 p.m. These are the recommended times. However, they'll take data from any 2-hour period from any of those locations. So we have 9 counting periods, 3 sites. We'd like to have at least 2 people at Route 62 for each count, but at others. And my math says we need, I think, 36 people minimum to cover everything. And again, this is voluntary. There is a sign up at the state website, which at the CTPS website. And it's drop down menus, you fill in stuff. And I'd like to have committee members figure out what times they'd like to be there and sign up. And then we're going to try and coordinate with CTPS to find out who signed up for where and when. And since I'm all excited about trail counts, I guess I'm at the center of this organization. And I think that's all I had to say on that. Marcia, did I miss anything? Or Richard, did I forget anything?
I think that's good. I mean, I assume that you'll be able to set up some kind of online sign up.
Yes, yeah, I'll work with Marcia and Nancy, obviously, to set up on the site. And then Barbara Pike, who is here, hello, Barbara, is going to be dragooning people in Acton and hopefully in Concord as well from the Friends. And again, one of the reasons we're doing this is to try and get some ideas to usage of the trail before the bridge opens. And we're coordinating with Barbara on this for Acton, and I'm hoping Chelmsford and the other towns are doing the same thing. But I'm only responsible for Concord, and even that's questionable. And so if any of you know anybody who wants to do it, please let them know, and that would be great. Barbara, is there anything you wanted to say?
Well, I would like to say that the Friends Spring newsletter just went to the printer today, and it has all the information for Concord and Acton with the locations of the website. So we're hoping that that will generate a lot of interest. And I remember when this first came up that there were at least 2 volunteers from the area in the neighborhood around Powder Mill Road who said they would help count. So I'm hoping that maybe that neighborhood will be able to help fill some of those slots.
Okay, well, we will get Mr. Kutra to rustle up his neighbors to help
we could
out.
perhaps post something on those information boards saying that we're looking for people to help with the
Right.
trail count once we have it set up.
Okay, that sounds great. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Thank you.
Nat, for setting this up.
Well, I'm a bit of a nut when it comes to counting, data is like really interesting, but you don't need to know that about me. I just wanted to finish a couple of things on make a note on what's happening on Route 2. Marcia's already talked about the wildlife viaduct. I go there fairly often to see work. The decking is in place over the brook. The ramp walls are up and in place. They're close to pouring concrete for the pier that will sit between the Route 2 Center one and the brook. And the abutment on the Acton side is going up. So things are moving along swimming lake. When I tried to pin down what I thought was a person in management, when I met him a couple of days ago, he said November, we'll see. But I think we'll definitely be ready for springtime of next year to open up and use the trail. So that's my comment on that. Any committee liaison reports? Any members have any liaison reports? Okay. Other comments from the committee?
I'll just make one quick comment about a discussion in regard to possibly a prison display, you want to call it that. There's a doctor who has approached us about having some kind of what she call a prisoner's walk to look at the history of the prison and the people who are incarcerated and et cetera. So I'm working with her on that possibility, and that might also include something about the cemetery. Because it is right along the trail there. So it could be an interesting project. She's going to try to get some visuals that I hope to present here in another meeting or two.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Okay, members of the public, the doctor, I'm sorry, I forgot the last name, doctor from Acton, please. I apologize. Name and address would be great. Thank you.
John Blute.
Thank you.
Spelled B-L-U-T-E. I'm a retired orthopedic surgeon who worked in Concord for 37 years. And I spoke about this with Barbara Pike, and I'll try to make this brief.
Thank you.
But I think it was a definite incident that concerned me and the physician I was walking with. So in real time, this was Tuesday afternoon, about 12:25, 12:30. We were walking from West Concord towards Sudbury on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Background is I use this during the week and weekends, have for years. It's an incredibly good resource in the area, and I support it also. So we were, for those of you who know the trail in that area, we had gone across, I believe it's Old Marlborough Road, and there's a turn to the right where there's a garage and a dirt area going by. We had gone by that, and I somehow sensed behind me that something was going on. Peg Helming, good internist who worked with us over the years, was walking with me, and I said something to her, and then I turned, and behind me was a white sedan being driven by let's say a senior woman, probably no more than 25, 30 feet behind me. We stepped out of the way rapidly. We discussed with the woman what had happened, and she said she thought she was turning into a road. She said it looked a little narrow, but it was just a road. We told her where she was and the concerns that we had. And fortunately, at that time, a nice couple who I believe live immediately adjacent to the rail trail there came on and sort of joined in. With difficulty, we got her to back up to the area of the side turn, and she was able to, with some difficulty, get out onto Old Marlborough Road.
Mm.
So the reason I'm bringing this up is safety. One would say there are islands in the turning, going across the roads which are there. But my strong suggestion would be to consider something that doesn't have to be a rigid post. It might be a flexible post or something that in large graphic letters right in the middle, easily able to be read, said, "This is the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Do not drive on this. No motor vehicles." Again, she could barely see over the steering wheel. 2 physician's assessment from discussing things with her was, it's really questionable whether she should be driving or not, to give you a perspective. And we did discuss this when, sort of to our amazement, about 5 minutes later, a Concord policeman on a motorcycle came up, and we discussed it with him, told him what had happened and our concerns. So I will defer to those of you who are listening and who have to make decisions about this. I know there have been things done in the past. There are signs on the side, certainly, that you can look at, et cetera. But I would strongly suggest consideration for that. Something right in the middle, something that clearly says what this is, what's going on, and so that something like this doesn't happen. Because if her foot had slipped or something else was going on, this relatively benign incident might have been a lot worse.
Dr. Blue, thank you very much for bringing it up. I think first, Marcia, you probably are the go-to person for this issue.
I'm the starting point, but I'm going to defer to Mass DOT on possible suggestions for what we might do. I mean, there was a lengthy conversation about things in the middle of the trail and the problems that they presented. That anything. Cyclists don't even pay attention to the splitter islands that are slightly raised at these intersections. So we've been talking about getting the yellow flags like they have in Acton and installing them in Concord along 2C. But this is a new item, and I'm perplexed. Well, it's not entirely new. I mean, the owners at 38 Williams Road have had this situation happen, not involving a senior, but somebody who was clearly under the influence, and trying to figure out how to designate the trail separate from the driveway so that they actually know where they are is an issue. So I will continue to explore the possibilities.
Mr. Kiernan, you happy, and you're lucky to be here tonight. Is there anything you can add or?
I know, there is a design guide coming out later on in regards to trails, in particular for trails, and I believe they would cover that. But there are design your designer, Concord's designer currently would be aware of those and would be installing them for, well, I think they will not be installing them for your portion of the trail because it's already open.
Already done,
obviously for all the Sudbury crossings, they will be installing them, and they vary relative to the, what type of crossing it is. It is something that's looked at, and there's always the problem with that you want to shut down access so you don't have vehicles going down the road unintentionally, but you also need access for emergency vehicles that they don't have to open gates. They don't, and they're able to get onto the trail easily enough.
Emergency.
There is, I know in work that they hate the idea of bollards, anything like that, because it's a danger to cyclists. But there's obviously a balance there, and the engineer will use best practices for the entries. I think if you have a particular incident at a particular location, then maybe it's reassessed, and that will be obviously independent of my project, but for each town and each municipality, if this sort of situation is occurring, especially like Marcia said, there's one relative that it's right beside a driveway. It may need some individual and particular attention because of that. And it would be an individual case. Obviously we would add the standard islands or treatment for the entries off a road or a driveway. But if we have an individual situation like Marcia was saying, where it's right next to a driveway and the same problem has occurred multiple times, then it would have to be addressed. I'm not sure how that would happen, because obviously it's not a project.
Yep.
You know,
Okay.
it might have to be done by the town.
Okay. Well, this is now being brought to us, Marcia. I guess we'll take your lead on what has to happen.
Right, I'll consult with both the police department and engineering and see and check in with GPI when Matt Kearney is back from his vacation next week. So I'll get some input and bring some ideas back to you at your May meeting.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Blue, thank you very much for bringing it up. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I think moving forward with something that can be of benefit without being too intrusive or too irritating or too
Or
frustrating.
dangerous. Yeah, dangerous. to
Yeah, or
cyclists,
dangerous to someone is entirely appropriate. But
have
there
had-
were obvious, there
go
are
ahead.
obvious dangers there.
Yeah. I have experience with hitting a bollard in the center of a trail. So anyway.
Well, we don't like to hear that, sir.
Well, there's no work for you guys, sorry.
Well,
For the orthopod, so.
I know that it sounds a little unusual, but if you can prevent a fracture, it's a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah, got to roll like a ninja. So,
Yeah.
any other public comments or questions?
Other than I would like to thank Dr. Blute for fixing my son's wrist many years ago.
Oh, well, you're welcome. It was a wonderful career, and it's an interesting new phase of life. And I would say to all of you, one of the wonderful things of this phase of life in the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail is being able to explore nature, to listen, to see, to hear, and to sometimes have a chat with the ghost of Henry David Thoreau up there in Acton, which I do enjoy.
I'm sorry, he never went to Acton. He is a Concord ghost and he hangs out here, just so you know.
No, sir. No, he spent time at the Ebenezer Wood Pencil Factory in Acton, as you recall.
Yeah, I do recall.
But
You're correct.
yes,
Okay.
there you go.
All right. So that's a private opinion, not an opinion of this committee. So
yes.
If there is no other business, yes, Mr. Jim?
Yes,
Gutra?
are you gonna affect a meeting date?
I am not affecting a meeting date tonight. The committee is not either. I think we have to first converse with Marcia to find out what's what, and then post a date. And at the same time, Jim, I'll take personal responsibility for sending an email to you and to Greg Mueller. So, and if you could pass it on to the other folks, we'll do that.
That would be great, Nat. But it is an expectation that you will meet before the 6th, so that you can take a look
Yes,
at.
yeah, I mean, this is what we've talked about. I don't know
Marcia's
what
submitting.
because we need to have another meeting around. I'm not sure we'll do it at 7 o'clock at night. I don't know what or when. I will partly use Marcia's guidance because she spends a lot of time working with all sorts of stuff, and I want to make sure she has time to prepare as well as to give.
And yeah, and also I think that Eamon will have information that would be useful as well.
Right. So, but I will personally commit to you, Jim, to let you know and let Greg know, and then we can get the ball rolling on that. And we'll post it as required by law with enough time and enough documents up there.
Thank you to you all. And Mr. Kernan, thank you for participating tonight.
Greg, did you
Thanks,
have a
Nat.
final word?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Okay. Can we have a motion to
Motion to adjourn.
a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Thank you for filling that in.
I second it.
Okay. I forgot. Do we need a vote? No, we don't.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, we do. Okay. So thank you. God, it's been a long day. Motion is to adjourn. Ms. Boardman
Yes.
and Mr. Follender,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Soden,
Aye.
Ms. Steele,
Yes.
and Mr. Welch says aye. This meeting is adjourned as of 9:20 p.m. Thank you all for being here. Oh, Thank you. Oh, that was a wave, Eamon, not a hand up. Okay, thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Night.